I'm not the kind of guy who looks for trouble at work. I analyze risks, document issues, and sleep better, knowing everything is exactly where it should be. Numbers don't lie. People do. That's something I learned way too late. My name is Daniel, 39, senior analyst in a mid-sized tech corporation in Chicago. I've been in the compliance department long enough to recognize certain patterns. When someone lowers their voice during a meeting, when they close their laptop too fast, when their smile looks more like a warning than a gesture of trust. And 3 months ago, my manager, Ryan, gave me all three signs at once. It started innocently. Our team was reviewing quarterly vendor invoicing, a routine process I could do half asleep. One vendor, Trust in Dynamics, submitted a batch of invoices tied to a new support contract worth $3 million annually. I flagged one entry: mismatched dates between the service period and the payment request. Nothing dramatic, but enough to color the line red in our system. Red means pause the payment, review documentation, get managerial approval, open an internal ticket if needed, basic policy. Non-negotiable. Ryan stopped behind my desk, coffee in hand, and asked what was taking so long. I told him. He glanced at the screen for maybe 2 seconds and said, "Clear it. Mark is low. They're a priority vendor." I thought he was joking. Treston was known to push boundaries, and compliance had flagged them twice in the past year. I reminded him, not arguing, just stating policy. He leaned over, pressed a key on my keyboard, and said through his teeth, "I said mark it low. I'll deal with the paperwork." Then he walked away. I remember sitting there staring at the screen, feeling something tighten in my chest. I didn't clear the flag. I couldn't. I logged a note instead, an internal review comment, time-stamped with my initials. That was my quiet way of saying, I saw this, and I'm not taking responsibility, alone. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Managers override things all the time. And Ryan, well, he was ambitious. Too ambitious, maybe. He liked shortcuts. He liked being seen as the guy who kept things moving. Still, I didn't touch the invoice again. A few weeks passed. Then the storm hit. It started when I came back from lunch and noticed a meeting invite titled Urgent Vendor Audit Review. Attendance required. Required, not optional. Participants. Legal, procurement, compliance. Me, but not Ryan. That was the first red flag. I walked into the conference room and the air felt thick, like everyone already knew something I didn't. Meredith from legal sat with a laptop open, lips pressed together. Procurement manager kept tapping the pen, fast and nervous. No one made small talk. When they finally turned the screen toward me, I understood why. It was the same Treston invoice. Only now the audit log was open on the right side, and the red flag, my red flag, was gone. Replaced with status, low risk, approved by analyst. My username, my credentials. At first I thought it was a system glitch, or maybe someone misclicked. But then Meredith scrolled. There was a line in the metadata I had never seen before. Last edited, by R. Hartwell, manager. Timestamp, so too, 11 a.m. My stomach dropped. I'd never logged in at that hour. And if a manager edits an analyst's entry, the system is supposed to create a new record under their name, not overwrite ours. I remember my voice sounding smaller than it should have been when I said, "That's not me. I didn't touch this." Meredith didn't look surprised. She just asked, "When did you last see it in red?" I told her the exact date, the exact time, and even the comment I left in the internal note. She nodded once and said, "That note is missing." That was the second punch. You don't accidentally delete internal review notes. Not in our system. There's a 4-step confirmation process. Someone did it deliberately. Someone erased my warning. The room fell silent, and that silence wasn't neutral. It was the kind that feels like everyone is recalculating what they thought they knew. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. At that moment, it was something colder. Something like betrayal, but professional. When you work with data, the idea that someone can rewrite reality behind your back feels personal. Then procurement dropped the final piece. The vendor is disputing the contract. They're claiming they never received half the services, and the timestamps don't match. This could cost us $3 million. I felt the room tilt a little. Ryan had overridden my warning, then he hid it. Then he edited the approval trail using my name, and now the company was bleeding money because of it. They weren't accusing me? Not yet. But they needed answers, and the only person who had them was the one not sitting in that room. My manager. I walked out of the conference room with the same feeling you get when you realize the floor under you isn't as solid as you thought. My hands were cold. My jaw was tight. And for the first time in 14 years of corporate work, I felt genuinely unsafe. Not physically, professionally, morally. Because if someone is willing to edit system logs at 2 a.m. to hide a risk, then they are willing to do a lot more. And as I headed back to my desk, I already knew one thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. But I didn't know yet that Ryan had left a trail, a timestamp, a digital fingerprint he thought no one would ever notice. I wasn't supposed to find it. Not me. Not anyone. But that was the beginning of everything. The moment I got back to my desk, I saw Ryan's office door half closed. Not shut, not open, just enough for him to see who was coming but pretend he was focused. That was his style. Everything about him had to look unbothered, but the audit meeting bothered him. I could tell even before I spoke to him. He glanced up when I approached, not with surprise, but with that irritated flicker managers get when something they buried starts crawling out of the ground. "Close the door," he said without looking away from his monitor. I did, and when I turned back, he had already switched his screen to a spreadsheet that wasn't the vendor file. So he prepared for this conversation. He knew. I stayed standing. I didn't trust myself to sit. "What happened to the Treston invoice?" I asked. He leaned back, laced his fingers behind his head, and exhaled in a way that said, "You're already annoying me." "Relax," he said. "Legal is overreacting. It's just a date mismatch." "That's not what they told me." His jaw tightened. Very slightly, but I've worked with Ryan long enough to read micro-expressions. His face always tightens when he's calculating a lie. "They said someone changed the risk status," I continued, "under my name. At 2 a.m., he shrugged. "Probably the system glitching again." "No," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It was edited by your account." He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just smiled. That smile made my skin crawl. "Dan," he said, "we both know how messy the back-end logs are. Anyone with admin can adjust things. It doesn't matter. The vendor is clean. Let it go." Let it go. The same words from 3 months ago. Only now there was $3 million attached to them. I asked him again, calmer this time, why he deleted my internal note. He scoffed. "Because you sounded paranoid," he said. "If every little mismatch gets flagged, we'd never pay anyone. Compliance would drown us." "You know that's not how the policy works," I replied. "You also know my note was required for audit." "So what?" he said. "Do you think legal is going to fire you? They need someone to blame, not a sacrificial lamb. The company will take a hit. The execs will sign an amendment, and the world will keep turning." I realized then that he truly, deeply believed he was untouchable. Maybe he was. Managers like him usually are, until they're not. I walked out without saying anything else. There was no point. He had rehearsed the script, and every line was designed to make me doubt myself. But doubt wasn't what I felt. It was anger. Slow, tight, controlled anger. The kind you don't yell about. The kind that settles in your chest and refuses to leave. And something else. The sense that he wasn't just hiding a mistake. He was hiding a pattern. That evening I stayed late. The office emptied out one cluster at a time. Marketing, engineering, HR, finance. Eventually the floor lights dimmed automatically. I put on headphones but didn't play anything. I needed the silence. If Ryan used his admin override at 2 a.m., it meant something simple. He didn't do it from home. He didn't have remote access. Only directors had that. So he was in the office, which raised more questions. Why was a manager logging into the risk module in the middle of the night? Why was he editing approvals using my credentials? Why erase only one note, not the others? I opened the audit tool again, but this time I filtered by user, not invoice, and suddenly everything clicked. There were 8 other entries tied to Ryan's account around the same time period, all between 1:52 a.m. and 3:05 a.m., all involving vendors that had previously triggered minor flags, all showing rapid edits, none showing secondary approval, and 4 of those entries had the same anomaly. The visible record displayed the analyst's name, but the back-end log showed Ryan's. He was overriding risk flags, systematically, quietly, and using his team's credentials to make the logs look clean. This wasn't a one-time error. This was a pattern, and if I could see it, someone else eventually would, especially if those vendors ever got audited. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen, feeling the anger turn into something sharper. Clarity. Ryan wasn't cutting corners. He was covering tracks, and now the company was exposed in a multi-million-dollar dispute because one of those shortcuts finally collided with reality. But the worst part wasn't the financial impact. It was that he used my name, my credentials, my reputation. He gambled with my career to save his. The next morning, the situation got worse. Legal sent a follow-up email. Please provide full context on your involvement with the Treston invoice and all related approvals. They weren't accusing me, but they were formally documenting. Ryan was CC'd, which meant 2 things. They didn't trust him. They wanted a written record from me before he tried to shape the narrative. I typed my response carefully. Fact-based, detailed, no speculation, no emotion. I included the date of the red flag, the exact dialogue we had, and the fact that my internal note was missing. I hit send. Ryan replied 3 minutes later. Let's sync before sending anything that could be misinterpreted. Come to my office. Misinterpreted. To him, the truth was a threat. When I stepped into his office, he closed the door again, this time without asking. Why would you escalate? He demanded immediately. I didn't escalate, I said. Legal asked for context. I gave them facts. You should have checked with me. That would defeat the point. He stared at me, stunned for half a second that I said that out loud. He wasn't used to being challenged. Then he said something that revealed everything. You're overthinking this. No one is going to dig deep into logs. They'll patch the dispute, settle with the vendor, and in 2 weeks, none of this will matter. It was the first time I heard real fear in his voice, buried under arrogance, but there. Because he didn't say, there's nothing to find. He said, no one will dig. Meaning, there was something to find. And for the first time in years working under him, he realized I had already seen too much. I walked out. I didn't look back, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Something didn't add up yet. One detail. One question that kept pulling at me like a loose thread. If Ryan edited logs at 2 a.m., who opened the building for him? The office used badge access. After 10 p.m., it logged every entry and exit with timestamps. There was a record somewhere, a physical proof, and if I could follow that trail, the entire story would shift. They thought I was going to drop it. I wasn't. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of panic or fear, those things pass. What stayed was the realization that I had been working under a man who operated in the dark, while pretending to lead in the light. And whatever he did at 2 a.m. wasn't a shortcut. It was a system. By the next morning, I had one goal: follow the physical trail. Access logs were handled by corporate security, a small 3-person team tucked behind a badge-only hallway on the mezzanine floor. They oversaw cameras, badge swipes, building alarms, everything Ryan likely forgot existed. Security doesn't hand out data to analysts. You need a reason, and my manager's lying isn't a reason. But I didn't go there hoping for a miracle. I went because I knew someone who could give me what I needed. Her name was Claire. We'd worked on a fraud case together 2 years ago. She was detail-focused, sharp, maybe a little paranoid. But in her job, paranoia wasn't a flaw. It was a survival mechanism. And she still respected me because back then, I didn't sugarcoat reports or try to shift blame to other teams. She remembered that. When I walked into the security office, the first thing she said was, "You're here about the Treston mess." Not a question. I didn't ask how she knew. News travels faster than truth in our company. I nodded. She lowered her voice. "I saw the legal invite. Ryan wasn't on it." "Not an accident," I said. She studied me for a second, then gestured to the chair. "Sit." I did. Then she asked the question no one else had asked me. "How deep is he in this?" It was the first moment I felt something giving way inside me. Not breaking, but shifting. Like all the weight I'd been carrying suddenly rearranged itself into a shape I couldn't ignore anymore. "He edited at least 9 entries across different vendors," I said, "all between 2 and 3 a.m., all using analyst credentials." Claire's expression didn't change, but her posture did. She straightened. "Do you know why?" she asked. "I think he was covering recurring date mismatches. Maybe to meet quarterly targets. Maybe procurement pushed him. Maybe he wanted to impress the director. I don't know yet. Do you know who let him into the building?" I shook my head. "That's what scares me," she said. Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard. She didn't even ask for a formal request. She was already checking logs. It meant she'd been worried too. She pulled up the badge history for the night of the Treston edit. The screen showed hundreds of entries during normal hours, then nothing for hours after midnight. Then one swipe appeared. 1:46 a.m. Hartwell Ryan, level 5 entrance, 1:47 a.m. Hartwell Ryan, floor 7 elevator, 1:50 a.m. Hartwell Ryan, compliance, wing door. He let himself in, alone. "Do you have camera footage?" I asked. She hesitated, not because it was forbidden. It was, but because she knew what I was actually asking. Confirmation. And she gave it. She opened another window and typed a date and the timestamp. The footage loaded. Empty hallways. Cleaning crew earlier in the night. Then nothing. Then Ryan, walking fast. Not running, not casual. Just fast. Like a man who decided something hours ago and was now executing it. He wasn't carrying anything except a backpack. He wasn't on a call. He wasn't drunk. His movements were sharp, controlled. He scanned into the compliance wing. He disappeared into the hallway leading toward our department. Then 2 minutes later, camera footage caught something else. He covered his face with the hood of his jacket before passing the second camera, the one closest to our pod. He knew where every blind spot was. Not accidental, not sloppy, not desperate. Planned. He didn't want to be recognized on internal footage, but he had already been logged by the badge. That contradiction hit me harder than anything else. The man wasn't stupid. He just believed the world worked in his favor. He thought covering his face was enough because he assumed no one would ever check the badge logs. He assumed legal would ask questions but wouldn't dig. He assumed security wouldn't be interested. He assumed I would keep my head down. He underestimated every single person in that chain. And while I watched the footage, a thought formed. Slow, unwelcome, cold. He didn't manipulate the system because he could. He manipulated it because he thought I wouldn't push back. He picked my credentials because I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who didn't want trouble. That realization, it didn't break me. It calcified something. Claire sat back in her chair, crossing her arms. He's done this before. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an accusation. It was a conclusion. I think so, I said. She nodded once. Then you're not dealing with sloppiness. You're dealing with someone who's been getting away with this a long time. My throat tightened, not from fear, but from the understanding that this wasn't just about one invoice. It was about a culture that protected men like him because they delivered results while bearing the costs. Claire closed the footage and rotated her chair toward me. "So," she said, "what are you going to do with this?" And that was the moment. The exact second I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Option 1: walk away, pray, legal untangles the mess, and hope Ryan directs the blame elsewhere. Option 2: step into the fire. Not recklessly, not emotionally, strategically. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I remembered something Ryan said the day before. No one will dig. He believed that. He depended on it. And that belief was the structural weakness in his entire operation. I wasn't going to leak. I wasn't going to make a dramatic scene. That was never me. But I wasn't going to let a man rewrite my work, my name, my integrity to build his results. I looked Claire in the eyes and said, I'm going to document everything, properly, step by step, and then I'm taking it to legal before he realizes how much I've seen. She nodded slowly. That's the right move. But before I stood up, she added one more thing. There's something you need to check before you go to legal, something on the system side, something you'll want to see yourself. I frowned. What is it? She turned back to her monitor. The timestamp you saw, the 2:11 a.m. edit. There's a secondary log attached to it, hidden in the back end. Most people don't know it exists. Why would there be a secondary log? She met my eyes again. Because someone tried to delete the original. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Then she opened the hidden system audit, and everything I thought I knew about the situation shifted again. Not Ryan, not a vendor, not a policy oversight, something deeper, something deliberate, a shadow under the shadow. And this time, I wasn't just a witness. I was in the middle of it. The hidden log wasn't pretty. Claire pulled it up like it was just another line of code, but what I saw on her screen was the difference between a suspicion and a case. There it was. Original status, high risk. Original author, D. Keller, me. Original note, service dates inconsistent with invoice period. Hold payment pending documentation. Then, override event. Status changed to low risk override. Author R. Hartwell, Ryan. Time, 02:11 a.m. Action. Internal note removed by admin. And below that, the part Ryan didn't know existed. System entry. Delete request denied. Snapshot archived to audit. Shadow table. He tried to erase my note. The system refused and stored a copy in a place only security and infrastructure knew how to reach. He didn't just override my judgment. He tried to wipe the record that I'd ever disagreed. That's deliberate, Claire said quietly. No way he can call this a glitch. I just nodded. I wasn't shocked anymore. Shock had burned out a while ago. What I felt now was something else, like someone had taken the weight off my chest and placed it in my hands instead. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I had leverage. Can you export this? I asked. Not to email, she said, but I can generate an internal report, log it as a security observation, and share it with legal under privileged review. Do it, I said, and add the other vendors he touched that night. She gave me a look. You're sure you want to widen this? Yes, I said, because if they only focus on Treston, he'll call it a one-off error. I want the pattern visible. She nodded. Then you're not just saving yourself. You're about to blow up his entire way of working. I'm aware. She didn't smile, but there was a flicker of respect in her eyes. By noon, Meredith from legal sent me a separate invite. Privileged meeting, vendor risk case, no forward. No CC to Ryan, no procurement. Just me, Meredith, and someone from internal audit. That's when I knew they were taking it seriously. When I walked into the small conference room, there was a printed packet on the table. Claire had moved fast. The hidden logs were formatted as an appendix, each override listed with timestamp, original status, new status, and user ID. Meredith tapped the cover page. Is everything in this report accurate according to what you've seen? She asked. Yes. Will you stand by this if it escalates? Yes. She studied my face for a moment, checking for hesitation, fear, anything that would crack under pressure. I'm not going after him out of revenge, I said. I just want the record to reflect what actually happened. I flagged the risk. I refused to clear it. He overwrote it in the middle of the night and tried to delete my note. If the company wants to take the vendor dispute hit, that's their choice. But I'm not carrying his decision on my name. Internal audit spoke for the first time. We're not in the business of protecting managers from their own signatures. We're in the business of protecting the company from exactly this. Meredith exhaled slowly, like she'd been waiting to hear that. All right, she said. Here's what's going to happen. We have a call with Treston tomorrow at 9. Their counsel, our procurement lead, finance, and Ryan. I want you on that call. As what? I asked. As the analyst whose name is on the approval, she said. You'll be on mute unless I ask you something directly. I want Ryan to walk into that call thinking this is just damage control, and then I want him to see what we've actually found at the same time the vendor sees it. Is that wise? Internal audit asked. It's necessary, Meredith replied. They're already questioning our process integrity. If we try to quietly fix this behind the scenes and it leaks later, it's worse. We're going to show that we found the problem and that we're dealing with it. She turned back to me. I'm going to ask you one more time, she said. Do you understand that this may end his career here? I didn't answer immediately, because this was the moment. Not the logs, not the hidden table, not the 2 a.m. footage. This, the decision to let his actions catch up with him. He ended his own career, I said finally. I'm just refusing to be the cushion he lands on. She nodded once. Good. Then we proceed. The next morning, the call began exactly the way these calls always begin. Overly polite, stiff, corporate. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your time. We're all aligned on finding a resolution. Treston's counsel sounded calm. Too calm. They knew they had leverage. A $3 million dispute can bruise a quarterly report. On our side, the panel was stacked. Meredith, legal. Our procurement director, VP of finance. Ryan, me, muted, camera off. Someone from Treston's legal. Someone from their finance team, Meredith opened. As you know, she said, there appears to be a discrepancy between our internal risk assessment and the approvals recorded in our system related to your invoice. Before we discuss resolution, we need to establish the facts. Treston's counsel agreed. We've reviewed the invoice trail you sent over. We're particularly interested in how a date mismatch was classified as low risk without escalation. Ryan jumped in before she even finished. Our team reviewed the issue, he said, voice smooth. We determined it was a technical delay in documentation and adjusted the risk accordingly. The services were rendered in full. It was the same story he tried on me. Only now he told it to people who record everything. Meredith didn't argue. She didn't correct him. She just shared her screen. Let's walk through that, she said. The system interface came up. I recognized the vendor module, the invoice number, the old familiar line item. Then she opened the audit trail. Everyone on that call could see it. Not screenshots, not summaries, live data. First, my original entry, high risk, my note, my timestamp. Then, the override, status changed to low, note deleted. 2:11 a.m. User, R. Hartwell. The call went quiet. Mr. Hartwell, Treston's counsel said, is that you? Ryan didn't answer immediately. You could almost hear the circuits in his head frying. There must be a system error, he said. Our admin access sometimes shows as manager overrides when... Meredith clicked again. This time she opened the hidden audit that Claire had exported. Before you continue, Meredith said, voice flat, please note the secondary log. The system registered a delete request for an internal risk note, authored by Mr. Keller. That request was initiated from your user account at 2:11 a.m. and denied by our security protocol. A snapshot of the original note was archived. She paused. This is not how a system glitch looks. Even Treston's counsel stayed quiet. The VP of Finance unmuted for the first time. Ryan, he said slowly, why were you in the building at 2 a.m. editing risk records? Ryan tried to pivot. I come in sometimes outside hours to get ahead of work. We're all under pressure to close the quarter. I must have been cleaning up minor inconsistencies. The risk remained low in my judgment. What documentation did you review? Meredith asked. He faltered. That's all in procurement's file. The procurement director spoke up, cold and precise. We never received any additional documentation for this discrepancy. If we had, the risk flag would have remained high until validation. There is no record of any such file. Ryan's tone sharpened. Look, this is turning into an inquisition. The vendor received services. We're debating a back-office timestamp issue. Treston's finance rep cut in. No, we're debating whether your company unilaterally lowered its own controls to push payment through without addressing our documented concerns. Chaos finally broke surface. Everyone started talking at once. Finance, legal, vendor counsel, procurement. Ryan tried to retake control of the narrative, but the more he spoke, the worse it sounded. Every answer he gave opened another question. I asked, why did you use analyst credentials? Why did you remove the note instead of updating it? Why is there no email trail documenting your judgment? Why is your badge registered on site at 1:46 a.m. if you claim this was routine work? He didn't know about the footage. He didn't know about Claire. He didn't know how many pieces were already on the table. He thought he was still playing chess. He didn't realize everyone else had switched to forensic accounting. Finally, the VP of Finance killed the momentum. We're pausing this call, he said, voice clipped. We will revert with a revised position after completing an internal investigation. Counsel, thank you for your time. We'll follow up in writing. He ended the call, just like that. The moment the call disconnected, a new one popped up on my calendar. Internal only. Now. Same people. Minus the vendor, plus HR. When my camera turned on, Ryan glared at me like I'd walked in with a knife. You set me up, he said. No, I replied. You set yourself up 3 months ago when you edited that flag. I just refused to disappear. HR took over. Ryan, effective immediately. You're placed on administrative leave pending formal investigation. Your system access is revoked. Security will escort you from the building after this call. Do not contact members of this team regarding this matter. He tried to argue. Of course he did. He talked about loyalty, about doing what it took to keep operations moving, about numbers, pressure, unreasonable expectations, everything except the one thing that mattered, the audit log with his name on it. He finally realized no one was defending him. Not procurement, not finance, not legal, not me. He was alone. When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, staring at my blank screen, my heart still beating too fast. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt empty. Relieved, yes, but also tired in a way that went deeper than the situation. Because this wasn't just about catching a bad manager. It was about admitting to myself that for years I'd been working in a place where people like him thrived because people like me didn't push back. Claire messaged me 10 minutes later. He's being walked out. Badge deactivated. You did the right thing. Maybe I did. But the dispute with Treston wasn't over. The investigation wasn't over. My part in all this wasn't over either. I thought taking away his access would be the end of the story. It wasn't. The hardest part came after. Ryan's removal didn't fix anything overnight. Chaos never evaporates just because you cut out the person who caused it. It settles into corners, hides in email threads, lingers in escalations. It waits for people to look away. And for 2 weeks, no one looked away. I spent mornings in conference rooms, afternoons in audit reviews, evenings clarifying tiny details that suddenly mattered. Every team touched by the vendor dispute, legal, procurement, finance, compliance, wanted context, documentation, my notes, my emails, my timeline. They weren't interrogating me. They were reconstructing the truth. And as uncomfortable as it was to repeat the same sequence over and over, I understood why. The company was preparing for 2 outcomes simultaneously. A settlement with Treston, since the services dispute was now provable, The vendor had indeed missed several SLAs, an internal disciplinary case because the integrity of our risk controls had been compromised. Both outcomes depended on the same thing: clarity, the kind Ryan never liked. 3 days after Ryan was escorted out, I was summoned again, this time to the executive floor, a place analysts don't normally walk unless they're either being congratulated or sacrificed. The assistant from legal led me to a small meeting room. Glass walls, filtered water, leather chairs, the whole don't get too comfortable aesthetic. Inside were the VP of Finance, our company's general counsel, director of internal audit, HR representative, and one empty chair facing them, mine. The VP started. "Daniel," he said, "thank you for coming. We've concluded the first phase of the investigation. Before we finalize the findings, we need to walk through the complete timeline with you." I nodded. I was ready for that. But then he added something I didn't expect. "You should know this hasn't been treated as a personnel conflict. This is a controls integrity matter." That mattered. A lot. Controls integrity issues aren't he said, she said. They're structural. They go into reports. They affect audits, investor reviews, sometimes SEC filings. It meant this wasn't about me challenging a manager. This was about the company admitting a weak point in its own system. Internal audit took the lead, opening a thick binder. This investigation covered 9 override events. All occurred between February and April. All were executed by Mr. Hartwell. All attempted to remove or bypass mandatory risk flags. And in every case, the original analyst note or documentation was missing. Then they placed a printed screenshot on the table. My original Treston note, the one Ryan tried to delete. Seeing it on paper, my handwriting style, my wording, my initials, did something to me. It stitched something back together. The general counsel leaned forward. "We want to confirm you were not aware that your credentials were used for these overrides." "I wasn't," I said. "I only discovered the anomalies after the legal inquiry." "And you did not authorize anyone to use your login?" "No, never." They exchanged a look, not skeptical, satisfied. That was important. Then HR spoke. "Daniel, do you have any reason to believe Mr. Hartwell acted under direction from another manager, or that this behavior was encouraged?" I shook my head. "If it was, I never saw evidence. He made decisions alone. I pushed back once in person. After that, he stopped involving me." Another look passed between the directors, this one heavier, because now they weren't just dealing with misconduct. They were dealing with unapproved, unauthorized high-risk overrides by a manager acting alone. Exactly the kind of thing auditors lose sleep over. Finally, the VP of Finance closed his binder. "Here's where things stand," he said. "We are formally attributing the Treston discrepancy to managerial misconduct. Your role in this matter is fully cleared." Relief didn't hit like a wave. It was quieter, like air releasing from a valve I didn't realize had been sealed for months. But he wasn't finished. "We also reviewed your documentation habits, your notes, your audit trails, your accuracy. Those records helped reconstruct what happened. Without them, this could have gone a different direction." He paused. "You handled this correctly." I didn't know what to say. Corporate praise is rare. Genuine corporate praise is almost unheard of. Then internal audit added, "We're implementing new access restrictions. Managers will no longer be able to override analysts' risk assessments without joint approval. That's because of what we found here." That hit me harder than anything else. Not because they credited me, but because it meant something changed. Something real. Something that would outlive this whole mess. They dismissed me after that, telling me HR would finalize their side within 48 hours. Before I left, the general counsel said one last thing. "You didn't just protect yourself. You protected the company. Not many people would have gone about this the right way." I didn't smile, but I felt something settle inside me, something like steadiness. Ryan's termination email went out 3 days later. A single line, Please note that Ryan Hartwell is no longer employed at our company. We thank him for his service and wish him the best in his future endeavors. Corporate code for this is over. We're not discussing it. Move on. But the real ending came that afternoon when Claire showed up at my desk. She didn't ask permission, she just dropped a small envelope. What's this? I asked. Official copy of the security audit, she said. For your personal records. Redacted, but enough to show chain of events? Keep it. I thought those don't leave the department. They don't, she said, unless someone earned it. I opened the envelope. Inside were printouts. My original risk flag, the hidden log, the 2:11 a.m. snapshot, the list of all overrides. The final conclusion from security. Unauthorized access and manipulation by manager. Analyst exonerated. She didn't stay long. Before she walked away, she said, You know this could have buried someone else? Someone quieter? Someone who didn't document everything. You kept receipts. Respect. That meant more to me than anything the executive said. The vendor dispute resolved a week later. Treston conceded some of their SLA failures. We conceded some internal delays. Both sides cooperated on a revised service schedule. The $3 million wasn't lost, just redistributed. Finance sent me a thank you note for assisting in reconstruction of the timeline. Legal sent a message saying the matter was closed. HR sent a formal letter clearing me of all involvement. And just like that, the dust settled. The final piece came a month later. A message from the VP of Finance. We're restructuring parts of compliance. I'd like to discuss a senior controls oversight role with you. I stared at the screen for a long minute before replying. Not because I doubted myself, but because I understood exactly what he was offering. Not a title, not a raise, a responsibility, the kind that comes when you prove that you don't look away when it matters. I accepted the meeting, not because I wanted to punish anyone, not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to be the hero, because I wanted to make sure no one else ever had to sit in a glass room defending themselves against a lie someone else wrote. People think stories like this end with victory. They don't. They end with clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about what you stand for. Clarity about what you won't allow. Not again, not ever. Ryan thought he could rewrite the truth. But the truth is patient. The truth keeps receipts. And the truth doesn't need revenge. It only needs someone who isn't afraid to follow it all the way down. This time, that person was me.